Have you physically forgotten how to fall asleep? Do you go through the day sometimes and you're sleep deprived and you're tired and you're so excited to get some rest, and then when you lay down to go to bed, you cannot physically fall asleep? This video is for you. So I'm not talking about insomnia that comes just from some acute stressor in your life. I'm not talking about if you have jitters the night before a big test, and I'm not even talking about if you have a really hard month in order to get through some big life event. I'm talking about if that struggle to fall asleep lasts after that month, long after, if it continues and continues. That's what I'm addressing here. So I had continuous, just almost inability to fall asleep, or very, very, very hard time falling asleep for about 3 years. 3 years. And it can be debilitating. So first of all, if you're going through this, there is hope. You can come out the other end of this. I did. So for this video, I'm just going to list some low-hanging fruit to get started. I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm not a healthcare professional. Okay, I'm not telling you what to do. This is all based on my experience only. So first of all, to understand insomnia, I want to give you a metaphor, and then I'm just going to list 3 things that are low-hanging fruit that you need to start thinking about. I'm going to compare insomnia, just in my observation, I'm going to compare it to depression. Depression is actually just this big umbrella term. Not everybody has what we call depression for the same reason. They don't all experience it the same way either. Most depression is actually not just linked to a single causal factor. It's usually like the perfect storm. So it could be related to a single causal factor. Let's say you get into a car accident, you have brain trauma, and it just so happens that the part of your brain that was damaged directly causes you to be depressed because of the part of your brain that was damaged, right? So it could be that simple. And likewise, insomnia could be that simple. There could be some major physical thing that's directly causing you to not sleep at night. But if you're like how I was, it's not like that. It's not a single causal factor. It might start out as a single causal factor in the beginning, and then it snowballs into a bigger and bigger problem, and then you get fear involved, and you wake up every morning when you actually slept for once. You know, after going 2 days without being able to sleep, when you finally sleep the 3rd night, you wake up and the first thought you have is, am I going to be able to fall asleep tonight? The next night? Is it going to be 3 days? Is it going to be 4 days before I'm able to physically fall asleep again? The fear snowballs, and next thing you know, it's not a single causal factor anymore. It gets really complicated. Okay, so my point is, if your insomnia is the perfect storm, then the solution's probably going to be multifactorial, just like how the insomnia is multifactorial. Okay, so let's start to tease out some of these things item by item. Number 1, low-hanging fruit. We're just going to list 3. Caffeine. If you are trying actively to get over ongoing insomnia and you're just using caffeine willy-nilly because you're tired, for heaven's sake, you don't sleep at night, so you use caffeine before you go to the gym, whatever time you go to the gym, use caffeine to get through the workday, etc. If you are just using caffeine willy-nilly, sporadically, all over the place whenever you need it, and you are trying to get over insomnia, then you are kidding yourself. And I'm sorry. I know how it is. It's tempting, but caffeine is a drug. Caffeine is a stimulant, and it is going to affect your ability to fall asleep, and it is low-hanging fruit to the point that you don't know how bad your insomnia is or what's going on with your insomnia. You don't even know that until you first get control of your caffeine habits. Okay. If you're struggling to sleep already, you're probably sensitive to it in a way that maybe somebody else can get away with it, but you need to take serious stock of it. And it just so happens that you're also helping yourself and your long-term health as well. But that's just a side note. Forget about that. A typical person who does not struggle to sleep at night, in order to actually sleep soundly, they're going to have to cut off their caffeine use at about 2 p.m. But if you are struggling to fall asleep, you need to move that time much earlier in the day. Okay, I would recommend, if you're serious about getting over your insomnia, have some caffeine by all means if you really need to use caffeine. Listen, I really like yerba mate, and when I would try going cold turkey, or just totally going without it to try to learn more about my insomnia, That actually wasn't the cure to my insomnia. The cure, as regards caffeine, is to have major respect for caffeine. And what does that look like? Have some caffeine by all means, but have it 1 hour after you wake up, and that's it for the day. Okay? 1 hour. Have it 1 hour after you wake up and then stop. That way you're going to try to work with the natural spike and fall in cortisol that you need to have in order to have a healthy circadian rhythm, okay? So there's that advice, take it or leave it. Second thing, temperature. This can be a game changer. First of all, there's the temperature outside your body and there's the temperature inside your body. There's the heat that your body is generating. Now, the fact of the matter is you're going to struggle to fall asleep if you are too warm. So the ambient temperature in the room that you're in should not be higher than 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That comes from Shawn Stevenson, Sleep Smarter. That was one of the best books that I read, and it's true. Okay, now you should be perfectly comfortable. You should not be shivering. And so if you don't like 68 degrees, if that's too cold, because you should probably even go a little colder than that if you can handle it comfortably. But if 68 degrees is already too cold, then just make sure that you're comfortable under a breathable, nice type of bedding. Okay, your bedding, if it's causing you to sweat and it's only been 15 minutes that you've been laying under it and you're already quite toasty, that is too warm. Okay, there's all sorts of products out there nowadays. Go, possibly if you're able, invest in something that's made to be breathable and to support good temperature regulation at night. You do not want to be stifling yourself under a bunch of sweaty bedding. Okay, and the ambient room temperature also should be pretty low. Now, lastly, for the external, if you're going to wear clothes to bed, make sure that they're breathable, loose-fitting, breezy clothes. Okay, now, inside your organs, in your body, you're going to be generating too much heat if you work out too soon before bed and if you eat a meal too soon before trying to fall asleep. In fact, the more that I learned about this now, because insomnia can become chronic due to fear and frustration, that's just one of the many, many factors. I'm not saying that's all, but it can become chronic in part due to the fear. Because that is the case, if I eat too soon before bed because I was, eating with a group and we started the meal really late and it's okay, I do not try to fall asleep until that has had time to process, okay? You do not want to put a bunch of food in your system and so that your gut is starting to churn through all that food and then at that point try to fall asleep. Your body is going to be way too warm. You're going to feel your circulation kind of surging because your digestion is happening. Okay, so for me personally, I try to finish that meal about 2.5 hours before I want to start trying to go to sleep. Okay, for you, maybe it's different. Keep a journal. You do not need to overburden yourself with some big detailed journal that makes you more neurotic and detail-oriented and crazy. Okay, you're already crazy enough if you're not sleeping. So just keep a couple of bullet points every couple of days if you notice, it seems like this made it just a little bit easier to fall asleep. Just a little bit easier. And it seemed like then later I did this and it seemed like it made it much harder to fall asleep. Just keep a basic bullet points journal every couple of days to try to establish what your cutoff is, but there needs to be a cutoff for food. You don't want to go to bed starving either. Just establish a good, appropriate cutoff. And establish a cutoff with working out. Shawn Stevenson recommends finishing any workouts at least 3 hours before you go to bed. But just make some observations in your own life. Have a cutoff for that too. Try to make sure that you are cool enough while you go to sleep. Make that temperature nice and cool. It could be a game changer. Now, if you're super rich, there's like products that you can get that circulate water. There's one called the Chili Pad. I am not sponsored by them. I can't afford them, but I've heard, because I've done so much research on sleep when I was trying to get over this insomnia, which I did get over it, mostly just by myself, not by buying crazy expensive products. But if you have a bunch of money that you want to throw away, the Chili Pad or similar products, they circulate water underneath you. And I know Shawn Stevenson mentioned a study in his book in which people who had insomnia actually fell asleep faster and stayed asleep longer than people who were not diagnosed with chronic insomnia. And it was because they were wearing these things that were called cooling caps. And it circulated water around their head and cooled their core body temperature just by 1 degree. I'm not saying to buy any of these products, but it's just proof that there is a correlation with you need to cool yourself off in order to sleep well. Okay, the last low-hanging fruit, this is actually just a general approach recommendation. If you have a long checklist already of things that you do to try to fall asleep at night and it doesn't seem like anything's helping, then you need to approach this problem a little bit differently than later on when you're sleeping consistently. Okay, if you already sleep consistently from night to night, just typically you're able to fall asleep, then by all means go and do all those other things. But if you are already going through this big long checklist and yet you're not able to sleep, you need to realize that your primary priority needs to be getting back into the habit of falling asleep at night when you actually want to get some rest, because that's the thing you're struggling with. The things that I did in order to fall asleep early on in the process of getting over insomnia, they're probably things that now I wouldn't even do. Okay, but the world is upside down when you can't sleep at night. The world is upside down. I'm not saying to throw sleep hygiene away, because you need, sleep hygiene is a good part of it. So I'm not saying to throw it away, but sometimes you end up doing counterintuitive things in order to fall asleep, and I would say, as long as you're not hurting yourself, more power to you for finding things that can get you back into the rhythm of sleeping at night. Okay, so do not keep a long, complicated laundry list, a long checklist of things that you have to do before bed because you think it's going to help you get over insomnia. If it's not working, stop having such a long checklist that it feels like you're getting ready to fly to the moon every night, and then in spite of yourself, it doesn't even help you fall asleep. Okay, if you keep overcomplicating it, then it means you are taking in a lot of advice that might be good advice about how to improve your sleep quality, but you need to put it on hold until you actually have the routine of physically being able to fall asleep at night. Once that routine is solid, then go back into those little optimizing strategies and tweak your sleep like this and do that. But do not do all that too early, because early on, probably for the first year that I would struggle so much to fall asleep at night, I kid you not, you guys, every 3 days I was able to fall asleep, but no more than that, okay, because I'd have to go through the exhaustion of 2 sleepless nights before I was physically tired enough that my body would finally just crash, hardcore, just crash. It's so destructive to your life. It's so destructive to your immune system. I was talking to doctors. I was getting prescribed different things. I was going through all the different routes that I knew. But one thing that was happening is that on the typical night, I was working so hard on this that it felt like I was getting ready to fly to the moon every single night. I was like, okay, I did this in this morning. I worked out in the morning. I got sunlight for this many hours. I took these supplements. Okay, now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. Now I'm going to put in these earplugs. I'm going to put on these noise-canceling headphones and listen to these delta waves. I'm going to lay on this acupressure mat. I was doing all sorts of things to try to fall asleep at night, and in spite of all that, it didn't matter, no matter what I did. Okay, so do not weigh yourself down with all these little tedious things if they're not even helping. You need to get to the core issue first and get yourself falling asleep at night first, and then bring back in all those little things if you want to. Okay? When you research insomnia online, differentiate between, oh, that's a nice tip to increase your sleep quality. Differentiate between that and advice for somebody who has major continuous inability to fall asleep at night. Okay. All right, that's it for part 1.